Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Public Economics. Thanks for a lively discussion on the boards for week 1. I am reading through everyone's posts now, and I will post responses to some of your posts as well as grades, hopefully by tomorrow. I did realize there's a little bit of a flaw in the way that I designed the posting assignments for each week. So I'm going to change things up just slightly, starting this week and then moving forward. So you are expected to respond to another student's post in order to receive full credit for each discussion board. However, many of you, I can't say I would do any different, waited until Sunday night to make your initial post, which really put a time crunch on responding to other students' posts. So what I'm going to do starting this week and then moving forward throughout the rest of the modules is to have you post your initial post by Friday evening and then post your response post still by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Don't forget that your paper proposal is due at the end of this week. All of that information can be found on the Blackboard page, including the rubric of what I'm looking for. So essentially, I want to ensure that nobody waits until the last possible minute to think about what they're going to do for their paper. This is a paper that involves an empirical component and a well thought out research question that sort of ties back to the material. And so waiting until the last minute to start that paper project is just not a good idea. So I've built into the course putting out or sending a proposal to me by the end of this week, or by the end of this module, and I will provide feedback on your proposal so that you kind of have an idea of what I'm looking for and what you can do in order to improve the final product and things like that. So please take a look at that and start thinking about what you want your paper to be. If you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I've already had a couple of you reach out with ideas about what you want to do with your paper, and that's absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to see those ideas. So this week's module is all about some of the traditional rationales for government involvement in the economy. So we've got public goods and externalities. Even Adam Smith, the most laissez-faire of economists, thought that government had a responsibility to provide some limited public goods. And so public goods, as I'm sure you all know from earlier econ classes, meet that non-rival and non-excludability, those non-rival and non-excludability conditions. So once a good is provided to one, it's provided to all, and it's very difficult to exclude non-payers from consuming the good. Part of the definition of what a public good is really depends on the current state of technology. So television signals, very classic example, once thought to be a public good, but with the introduction of scramblers in the case of cable television, and now the myriad of competing streaming services, that's no longer meets the definitions for being a public good. Excluding non-payers is very possible. Private police forces, private fire departments operate sometimes in tandem and sometimes as replacements for the public versions of these goods and services. And so excluding non-payers in those cases is possible, even though many traditional arguments hold that these really do meet the definitions or the criteria of being public goods. So one of the big topics in this week's readings is sort of various different thoughts on public goods and what constitutes a public goods and some of the difficulties of thinking through public goods. We also talk about externalities this week, costs imposed on third parties who are not part of a given transaction. So pollution is a really classic example of an externality problem, imposing costs on a third party who is not part of a particular transaction. Now, how government intervenes in solving an externality problem, that's a whole, brings the question to a whole different set of, or brings the problem to a whole different set of questions. And so with pollution, for example, We can choose to intervene via regulation, via Pigouvian taxes, or just assigning property rights, as Coase would suggest, and then encouraging parties to bargain to an efficient solution. These are all ways that we could deal with these externality problems. So even though these are traditional rationales for government involvement in the economy, there are ways in which externality problems can be solved privately, or different mechanisms of government that we can use to solve these externality problems. And these are some of the issues that we address in this week's module. We also talk importantly about the difference between pecuniary and non-pecuniary externalities. And this is really kind of a cool and important area to pay attention to, because the design of government policy is really, really important in this area, and gets particularly tricky when we're dealing with pecuniary externalities. This is something that's likely been very underexplored in sort of public policy generally. So that's a very brief, quick and dirty overview of what we're doing in Module 2 here. Next week, the ending of next week is Easter. I know it sneaks up on us quickly here. So you have a lighter workload next week due to the Easter holiday, and a slightly different set of due dates than we have this week. So just keep that in mind. I bring that up at this point because week 3 is lighter. And then you have assignments due in weeks 4, 5, and 6. And so if you want to, potentially use week 3 to work ahead on some of those assignments, that would probably be a really good use of your time, depending on how your load is with other classes. So this week, externalities, public goods. I'm very excited to see what the discussion that emerges from these topics and these readings for this week. And don't forget that your paper proposal is due at the end of the week. Thanks, everyone.